possibilities of election. So I bring to this position my experience, my knowledge, and my capabilities. Similarly, I bring on board insider knowledge because I have worked for these commissions, especially, IEC was that body which was the defunct, the transitional body from ECK to IEBC. So we set up systems, the systems, the legal regime, the operations. So I bring on board, I understand the process from the initial stages. I may have left, but I can still relate to that whole process. So I bring on board that knowledge, and similarly, I bring on board my energy, because elections management is by itself very taxing. It takes a toll on you physically, mentally, and I'm aware that with my youthful energy, I have the energy, I have the mental space, I have the ability to undertake this very critical task, and that is what I bring to this position. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing that. Yes, I do see from your CV that you did indeed spend 2 years, I think, at IEBC.
Yes.
And you also worked for another 2 years at the political parties. As a political parties liaison officer in the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, also 2 years. And thereafter, you were appointed Director of Constitutional and Legislative Affairs in the Executive Office of the President, and that's where you are now. That in the public service, I must admit, I think for those who are in the public service, would be considered a meteoric rise, because you are probably appointed to this job when you are 27 or so years of age?
Yes.
Yes, and you had just acquired your Diploma of Law from Kenya School of Law. That would have been in the 2011 or 2012?
2012.
2012, and then 2015 you are Director. And in that role, I believe you have told us that you provide technical support to the Head of Public Service, the Chief of Staff, and Deputy Chief of Staff. So maybe you can just expound a little bit on the explanation you can give for that meteoric rise. Was this director job competitively recruited? But also maybe just describe what is meant by technical support to this office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I can take you back to my upbringing. I come from a leadership family, and I've also been life has also been a bit challenging on my part and my family's part, because I was orphaned at a very young age, and I'm the firstborn in my family. So I had to grow up and take charge of siblings, and they were all young men at different ages in life. I had to deal with teenagers. I had to deal with lower primary students. So I think that is where I honed my leadership skills. That is where I honed my tenacity skills. That is where I honed my determination skills, because I was given a role and I had no other option than to grow up and to take up that responsibility. So I had to literally call myself to a meeting and take this responsibility. So I think that has informed my career growth, because I'm not scared of challenges. I may be young, but I think I take on the biggest challenges ever, because I always say, what's the worst that can happen? So I never shy. I always imagine that if I've undergone through this and I've come out strong, then there's something bigger for me in this world, in this country. So I take up opportunities that maybe my age mates may be shy to take up. But that's because I have built in myself this self-determination and this self-belief. I moved to the OP in 2015. There I first of all began as the personal assistant to the then Comptroller of State House. And then I transitioned to Director of Legal. That position, I applied for that position, I was interviewed, and was able to get it. It's a Public Service Commission appointment, and I've been serving there for the last, I think, 6 years now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
For that, sorry, there was no mention of you being a PA, but thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Are you a registered voter?
Yes, I am.
Where did you vote in the last election?
I voted in Lesamis constituency in a ward called Kargi, South Hor Ward, in the interiors, in a polling station known as Segel Primary School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll now ask Mr. Morris Kimuli to ask you a few questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Cecilia, congratulations for the far you have come. It's already victory, regardless of what happens.
Thank you.
Because you and I are lawyers, perhaps I can just ask you a general question. You don't have to know it.
Yes.
What does our degree LLB stand for? Somebody asked me that this morning.
It's a Latin word, I believe.
Yes. Well, you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
Many lawyers do not know.
Actually, I don't
It's
know.
Ligam Baccalaureus. Most of us just hold it and do not think about what it stands for.
But it's Latin, right?
It's Latin, you're right.
Okay.
Now, you say that you seize opportunities,
Yes.
and we are more concerned about what you deliver when you seize those opportunities. In these constitutional and legal adversary roles that you have enumerated in your CV, can you talk of one monumental achievement that can be attributed to you and your legal craft as a person?
Thank you for that question. I think by nature, the nature of my office is that it's highly confidential. So I may not specifically say what I have achieved. It's a team effort, and it's mostly support. So I may not pinpoint exactly what I have achieved personally, but I think I've provided enough support, enough technical support to the office necessary for the execution of its functions and mandates.
Let me just get this right. Your office is an office in the public service.
Yes.
You are employed by the Public Service Commission.
Yes.
If you have to be evaluated, because public servants are evaluated, you'll
Yes.
be evaluated on deliverables.
Yes.
Is there an option for me to say my work is confidential? Because when you're being evaluated, you show the deliverables. This is what I have achieved.
Maybe in that respect, you remember I joined this office when we were still in that 5-year period where we had to enact laws to conform to the Constitution. We had to enact a number of laws. We had to set up a number of institutions. So I think my role was very critical in this area because we had to work together with other organizations like parliaments, the AG, to ensure that we have these laws in place and these institutions in place, and to fill these critical institutions.
Okay. Now I note that you have indicated in your CV that you have some short trainings in understanding and analyzing public sector budget program, and you got that in Arusha. Is that correct, in 2019?
Yes.
Do you know where the funds of the commission, it's in the IEBC Act, do you know where the funds of the commission come from?
Yes.
Yes.
The funds of the commission come from the 3 sources of funds. The first source is treasury. The second source is donor funding. Third source is those that come to the commission by virtue of its mandate or executing its roles. Maybe fines, yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe nomination fees.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm also looking at the IEBC Act, and in relation to that also, when they are preparing the annual estimates, just briefly, do you know how the budgeting process for, just briefly, for the commission goes, it's in the elections, IEBC Act. Yes.
I think it's a general flow, I think, of all sectors in government. IEBC falls in what is known as the GGLO's sector. So the first thing IEBC does is they prepare the estimates. Then they defend these estimates in this sector, because we have 10 sectors in this country upon which we undertake our budgeting process.
They defend before who?
The first place they defend is under GGLO's program, because here we have the AG's office, we have a number of, we have the Ministry of Interior, we have a number of agencies in government. So you first of all defend your budget in this sector, then you go now and defend it before Parliament, and then finally you get your budget estimates.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. After this, maybe you may look at Section 21 of the IEBC Act. You get it clearer. Now, Article 38, 3 of the Constitution contains the right for every citizen to vote without unreasonable restrictions. Now, and it also says that you have a right to be registered as a voter without unreasonable restrictions. Can you think of any circumstances that would make the commission restrict somebody from registering as a voter? Yes.
Thank you for that question, my senior. These circumstances are prescribed by the law, and the law provides, I think, 4 exemptions. The first exemption is that you're a person of unsound mind. The second exemption is that you've been convicted of an offense and you've not been out, I think, for 5 years. Third exemption is that you are not a Kenyan citizen. And the fourth exemption, if I recall, is that, maybe I just stick to that.
When you say if you've been convicted of an offense,
yes.
Does the commission, in your knowledge, have a legal framework allowing prisoners to vote?
Yes.
So does that mean that prisoners will be registered?
Thank you for the question. We have provisions. The law itself provides that registration of a voter is a political right, is a constitutional right. And it provides that no person shall be denied that opportunity. So the commission undertook this process in the last general election. I remember when I joined the commission in 2010, there was a case.
Just because we have limited time between me and you, okay. I'm just asking, you said that you could be barred from registering as a voter if you've been convicted of an offense.
Yes.
And you agreed that prisoners have a right to vote. And for you to vote, you must be registered. So do you still maintain that when you have committed an offense, you may be barred from registering as a voter?
The law is unclear in that sector, because I know IEBC undertook prisoners registration in the last general election. And then voted for
the law is clear.
Election.
It's when you've been convicted of an election offense.
Okay.
But you are listing the circumstances under which you may be barred from registering as a voter. If you come to the commission, they tell you, no, you can't register as a voter. Were you done?
Pardon?
You were done with the listing?
Yes, I think I was done. Thank you.
You were done?
Yes.
Okay. Perhaps you may also need to look at Section 5 of the Elections Act. It contains more restrictions over and above what you have stated. Now, Article 86 of the Constitution talks about the voting method employed by IEBC. What would you say are the key characteristics of the voting method that is allowed by the Constitution?
Thank you. We have 3 parameters upon which to check on this method. The first one is that the voting method needs to be simple, accurate, precise, and efficient. The second point is that the tallying system needs to be simple, accurate, and precise, and efficient. The third aspect is that the result declaration system needs to be accurate.
Now, I'm talking about the first one.
Yeah.
Whatever voting method is used, that is Article 86. Now, Article 38 says that voting shall be by secret ballot. So when you look at Article 86, and it says whatever voting method is used, do you think there is any other voting method to be employed by IEBC which is validated by law, apart from secret ballot?
If I get you well, secret ballot is a physical form of voting. So the IEBC can employ an online form of voting. We don't do it now because it's not in our law, but it has been done in other regimes. But by and large, the method is by secret ballot. That is, you go to the polling booth by yourself, you vote by yourself, and you don't disclose whom you voted for.
That's okay. So your suggestion is that when the Constitution talks about whatever voting method, it could imply an online voting system,
but with the same,
which could be futuristic.
Yes.
And just my last set of questions. Listen to this statement and just tell me whether it is true. Boundaries delimitation is the exclusive and unilateral role of the Commission, of the IEBC. Boundaries delimitation is the exclusive and unilateral role of IEBC. Is that a correct statement under our Constitution?
Currently, it is. But if I may qualify, is that our Constitution is derived from the people of Kenya. It is a people's document. So if it is amended, if the function of IEBC is limited in that respect, then IEBC only implements the law. But currently, as it is, that function is solely for the IEBC.
Solely? Is it unilateral?
Yes and no, because it's our mandate, it's our key function, but we consult. We undertake stakeholder participation. We also involve Parliament. So it is the IEBC's mandate currently, but IEBC, as in all functions of IEBC and parliamentary approvals.
So the stakeholders appointed by law are for that purpose?
We have people of Kenya.
Yes.
We hold county forums. And actually their input forms part of the report.
So that is the people. The people, that is public participation. Next.
Yes. Then you go to Parliament.
What is the role of Parliament?
Parliament, 1, gives you the funding, and 2, we submit our report to Parliament, because Parliament, by its nature, undertake the sovereign role of Kenyans. So it says that a Kenyan can undertake this sovereignty directly or indirectly. So Parliament undertakes that role indirectly. So we go to them, we give them the report, the first report of IEBC, and then they undertake the inputs, they put the inputs, and then IEBC is not bound by their inputs, but it may consider their inputs.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other stakeholder?
The judiciary, because the process of boundaries review is highly emotive, and it comes with a lot of disputes. So the judiciary has a role in this process, in that anyone who's aggrieved goes to the judiciary, files their complaints, files their petition, files their case, and then the judiciary is able to determine within 90 days. And then now we do the final boundaries process, and we declare boundaries.
Is there any other stakeholder?
From the top of my head, in this particular process, no. It's Parliament, it's judiciary, it's the public.
Does the government printer play any role?
Yes, we gazette.
What if the government printer does not gazette? What are the options available?
In what respects?
If the government printer refuses to gazette the final outcome, what are the options available to the Commission?
We print in in 2 dailies of national circulation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kimuli. I will now request Dr. F.S. Abdallah to ask a few questions.
Good afternoon.
Right. From your CV, I've learned that you're the Director, Constitutional and Legislative Affairs, Executive Officer of the President. To me, this is it's quite a senior position, and the potential of growth is good there. Very good. Now, why did you choose, as the chair told you, this is a conversation, so let's converse, yeah? It's not an interrogation or investigation, all right? So, what then really interests you in IBC?
Thank you for that question. I think I have 3 passions in life, and maybe this is how I've been brought up. But I've always loved politics, I have loved the law, and I have loved elections. And these are not exclusive. So I have made a deliberate choice to be in these spaces, to be in the election spaces, the political spaces, and the law spaces. These are interdependent. So I applied for this position because, 1, I have worked for IEBC. So I understand IEBC, I understand its challenges, and I felt that I could offer myself for this position at this particular time so as to improve our democracy and improve our systems. Similarly, I believe that the major issue with IEBC is that we have conflict of interest, more so conflict of interest of the majority tribes. So I believe that, and this is my personal opinion, that IEBC needs a lot of neutrality, and that the presence of minority communities is by itself a stabilizing factor in IEBC, because our election process is highly emotive. We have undertaken overhaul of the systems in IEBC, of the personnel in IEBC, and we still have the same issues. So I believe that I can offer myself as a neutral candidate, and a candidate who has no loyalty to anyone, to any tribe, but to the country and to the people of Kenya.
Okay. What are the vision, mission, and the core values of IEBC?
Thank you for the question. The mission of IEBC, and the core values. The mission of IEBC is to undertake elections, free and fair elections, that are efficient, that are impartial, that are credible. The vision is to undertake free and fair, I think I've mixed, free and fair elections. The core values are integrity, professionalism, rule of law, impartiality, basically our national values, principles.
Good. What are the governance challenges facing the IEBC, and what recommendation would you make if you become a commissioner?
Thank you for the question. I understand IEBC from an insider perspective and then an outsider perspective. What I can tell as the major challenges facing IEBC in terms of governance is that there's a lot of friction between the commissioners and the secretariat. I don't know if it's by design or by other means, but what I can tell is that we don't have demarcation of roles, a clear demarcation of roles in terms of what the commission does, what the secretariat does. So you find that IEBC has executive commissioners and chairperson who sit in the commission on day-to-day activities. So you find that we have commissioners who are there to provide oversight and leadership. However, we have a team, which is the management team, which is also in the commission day to day. So you find that there's a conflict of interest, a conflict of mandates. Yeah, because a commissioner provides oversight, provides leadership, provides direction. Then you find that a CEO may or may not take direction from the commission. So you find that there is no clear demarcation of roles insofar as who does what. Similarly, we don't have, if I may say, the body to oversee IEBC in terms of the responsibility of governance in IEBC falls under which body. We don't have that. In other countries, we have such systems, but in Kenya, it's an open thing. So we don't know, upon the execution of these roles, the delivery of corporate responsibility of IEBC falls under whom. We are not told. There's no clear legislation. There's no clear. Actually, we don't have anything to tell us on that aspect. Similarly, the fact our elections are basically very emotive by their nature, because it's transition from one government to another. It's a matter of inclusivity as opposed to exclusivity. So you find that a lot of interest are in IEBC, and this interest also flow down to the commission, to the secretariat, because we are all human beings, and every human being has their own preferences. So you find that all these things merge and meet at IEBC. Yeah. So IEBC has a challenge, a big challenge in terms of how the mandate of the different sectors in IEBC.
Cecilia, you're the Director of Constitutional and Legislative Affairs in the Executive Office of the President. Have you brought this attention to the powers be or to the legality? You are next to the AG there. That's one question. You have worked there, and you say one of the reasons you wish to come back is to maybe do a proper governance, corporate governance. But as an individual, I mean, there is unfortunately the code of conduct for members, for the IEBC, for the Secretariat. In my opinion, the setup SOPs are there, but the issue is implementation and enforcement. Am I right, or could you correct me if I'm wrong?
I think you're right. It's not only implementation, it is also the design. You see, we borrowed IEBC. What you fail to understand, I think, in the country is that our commissions are not like state corporations. Yeah, but the legal framework is largely borrowed from SCAC. Yeah, State Corporations Advisory, State Corporations Act. So you see that we have in corporations, in boards in our country, the board members are part-time. But we borrow heavily from this scenario. We have not tailor-made our own regimes for commissions, which are different. IEBC, a commission in IEBC is executive, as compared to a board member in a parastatal. In a parastatal, the person comes in, does their quarterly meetings, the reporting, the analysis of the documents, the website, and goes. In IEBC, it's a daily occurrence. The commissioners are in office on a day-to-day basis. They work hand in hand with the management. But our systems such that we are placing commissioners in between state corporations and commissions. So there's no clear demarcation. So I actually think there's need for law, a separate law for commissions, because IEBC's challenges are not only for IEBC. I think they take place in all commissions, but IEBC, because of its key role, of its nature, it becomes public. So I think we need to understand that some things which work for state corporations may not work for IEBC, may not work for Land Commission, may not work for PSC. So I think we need to go back as a country, review our legal framework in terms of how constitutional commissions are run. Because in an issue like procurement, it is clear that a commissioner has no role in procurement issues. It's management. But what happens is that when there is an issue in the commission, who takes the blame? It's the commission. Yeah? So there's no clear, our laws are not aligned that area. Our systems, we are still living, we have different regimes governing our commissions. I think we need to look as a country, relook as a country, and develop clear systems for the commissions and for the corporations. That's my thinking.
Thank you. Cecilia, this issue of the chicken gate and the printing of the ballot papers, it is in the public domain, and we in the private sector do feel it was not right. So we are talking about these things which have been happening 4 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And you as a state officer in the legal and sitting in the office of the president, you're still thinking that we need to look at it. When do you think you look at it?
Please come again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that the procurement issue is it's not the responsibility of the commissioners. It is the responsibility of the secretary of the CEO, right? In the private sector, I have read about the ballot papers. I've read about all this, and one of the biggest flows to me is the procurement, because the last minute then is a rush, and obviously in business it'll go high. Now I'm not in a position to suggest as to what should be changed. You have the legal mind, you have the experience, you are sitting in the office of the president in charge of the legislation, and you're still saying as of today that we need to change it. So when do you think you want to talk about the changes? When will they come?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Bella. These proposals have been there. Then they circulate all over. We make proposals, we make recommendations. But there's no clear follow-up on this process, because the OP can suggest, IEBC can recommend, but what happens is that there's no finality to this process. I don't know if it's by design, but I still believe that there are gaps, and that these gaps need to be filled. I may not do it, I may not have done it before, but I think maybe when I'm at the helm of the commission, I can be able to propose much more better recommendations.
Okay. My last question. What proposal do you have to improve the image of IEBC and inspire confidence and trust in the citizens?
Thank you for the question. We have a problem of mistrust in Kenya. IEBC suffers from low public confidence and high mistrust. Maybe it's how we've undertaken our duties previously, how IEBC undertook its duties previously, but I think going forward, there's need for deliberate action to manage the perception, because in elections, perception is as good as reality. Similarly, there's need to be transparent in all our engagements. And transparency means involving all stakeholders, I believe, from the beginning to the very end. We need to communicate better to our stakeholders. We need to involve them better from the beginning to the end. So what happens is, if we involve our members, our stakeholders, at the very last minute, we leave them with no option but to castigate our whole process. But if we develop our plans, our policies, every step, every operational step, we are together, trust me, we'll cure our country's mistrust. Because when IT fails, and you've had a meeting with political parties, you've had a meeting with all the major stakeholders, you've developed plans, you've developed systems, you've developed contingency measures. So it makes our work easier. What happens is we don't involve our systems, our stakeholders early enough throughout the whole process, and similarly, we don't communicate very well to our stakeholders.
Thank you, Sila, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdallah. I'll now request Mr. Gideon Solonka to ask you some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Ms. Ngoyoni, we've had elections since independence. I believe you have to know the past in order to understand the present. Kindly tell us what are the successive election management bodies in Kenya since independence.
Thank you. For the longest time in Kenya, our elections were conducted by the local administration. Most of the DCs who were returning officers. Then we moved from that regime, and then we had a National Presidential Elections Act, which established the ECK, who conducted elections for quite a while. Then we disbanded the ECK and moved to IEC, and we are now at IEBC.
So we've had only 3 bodies since independence? That's
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Security is a major concern amongst employees of IEBC, especially during the electioneering period. And indeed, in the last election, we had incidences of insecurity and physical harm to employees of IEBC. What measures can IEBC put in place to address these concerns?
Thank you for that question. I've actually been a victim of this event. I remember when I was in IEBC at some point, I think in 2012, an aspirant came to the offices and he was so agitated that he had a gun and he pulled out, and I was shocked. I was at the reception. So he said, "You must do this," and he pulled out a gun. Then I said, wow. So I understand that security is a critical factor, more so in IEBC, the staff, the commissioners, the whole process. So as a commissioner, I think we will need to work better with the National Police Service, not only in the provision of security to our staff, to our members, but even during the conduct of elections. So I believe it is critical that we engage continuously, deliberately with this very serious stakeholder in this process.
Thank you. What are the general principles that the electoral system must comply with under Article 81 of the Constitution?
Thank you for the question. We have a number of principles under Article 81. The major one is that we need to have not more than 2/3 of one gender in elective positions. We also need to have elections conducted, a credible election conducted by secret ballot, by a neutral body, free from violence, free from intimidation. We also need to include persons with disability in the electoral process. We also need to undertake efficient voter registration and election processes. I think that is the principle of the electoral system from the top of my head. Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Proposals have been made for integration of the register of voters with the civil register. However, concerns have been raised over the fact that the National Registration Bureau falls under the executive, which comprises political players. In your view, if the 2 registers were to be integrated and taken into account the concerns, what action should be taken prior to such registration so as to ensure public trust in the process?
Thank you for the question. I think that it is important that we link these systems. By linking the IPRS, the Integrated Personnel Registration System, with the IEBC system, we cut costs because we're able to have a system that picks up automatically when one turns 18. That person can also be registered automatically. Similarly, we'll be able to have a clean register. Yeah, in that this system can guide us in terms of the number of persons who have died and the deletion of that aspect. However, it is housed in the national government, and our elections are largely that of mistrust. There's a lot of mistrust in Kenya. That makes our elections very expensive because we have a lot of mistrust. So I think we need to cure the mistrust first. We can have the perfect system, but if you don't have trust in the body, don't have trust in the process, don't have trust in the systems, anything we do will fall short of that process, of that system.
Thank you for that answer. Lastly, what government agencies will IEBC collaborate with when carrying out its election mandate? And how is that collaboration comes about?
We collaborate, first of all, with the National Police Service because they provide security. We collaborate with the National Treasury because they provide funding. We collaborate with Parliament because they make the laws. We collaborate also, it's only government agencies, with other constitutional commissions. Yeah.
Name some of them.
We can collaborate with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, Kenya National Human Rights Commission.
Okay.
We can collaborate with the National Police Service Commission.
That.
Okay.
Now, for Human Rights Commission, for what purpose?
Their mandate is to check on human rights issues, and elections by itself we can have a number of human rights issues in between, and I think they come in that aspect.
How about the National Cohesion and Integration Commission?
Oh yeah, in terms of hate speech and checking on those who undertake hate speech in the country, because what happens is that when we are aimless in our speaking, when we are aimless in our conduct, it ends up having an overflow election. Because if we leave it open to the ones who undertake hate speech, it may lead to highly emotive elections and subsequently violence, intimidation, and all that aspects.
Fine. And what about the National Intelligence Service?
Yes, we collaborate with them because they're the heart of this country's operations, and they're able to undertake security operations, discrete security operations. So we need them, we need their information, we need their expertise.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goyoni, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solonka. I'll now request Madam Elizabeth Mayo to ask her questions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Cecilia, are you ready?
Yes, madam.
Or do you want to take some water?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay. I'd like to refer you to the response you gave to my brother Maurice Kimuli on the stakeholders. You correctly identified various stakeholders, and you tried to explain the role of each stakeholder and how you will engage them. So the electorate is part of your stakeholder, and within that we have the women. So what are some of the barriers to women's participation in the election, and what do you think IEBC should do to address some of these challenges actually affecting women during the electoral process?
Thank you, madam, for that question. I'm also a believer in women participation in politics, because I believe when we leave one sector of society outside, we'll not achieve much.
Yeah.
So I believe that women must be involved in the electoral process. They should come out and participate as candidates. But I think in our country, which is highly patriarchal, women face a number of challenges in the electoral process. The first major challenge of women is intimidation, is violence, And I think how IEBC can come in is that every political party, every candidate signs a code of conduct during the elections. So I think IEBC, one, needs to come in and be firm in how this the code of conduct is implemented. And if you breach, IEBC needs to come out very strongly, very firmly, and hold you to account. Similarly, our elections are largely expensive. And by nature of our society, it's that women don't have the required resources to partake in this electoral process. We have the boys' club, which is known everywhere. And so men are able to rally behind each other and support each other. But women don't have that, that lack. So similarly, I think as IEBC, we need to undertake a number of voter education processes for women. We also need to link women with these bodies, which not only support women, but also provides funding. We have the Youth Women. It's a very critical body. They train the women candidates. They provide with some sort of funding, not directly. It can be in terms of advertisement. It can be in terms of materials. It can be in terms of holding meetings for you. Similarly, we have nominations. And in some areas in this country, when you get a certificate for a certain party, it's as good as being in parliament. So what happens is that there's a lot of violence, a lot of intimidation during nominations. Parties themselves contribute to this process. So I think, one, IEBC needs to be firm, because IEBC has a role in terms of managing political party primaries. So IEBC needs to be firm in terms of managing this process, so as to ensure that no single sector is disadvantaged. We have the youth who get the same problems. We have the PWDs who get the same issue. So I think IEBC needs to be firm in terms of regulation of the nominations. Finally, I think this is not in IEBC's mandate, but IEBC can make a proposal that we have very high nomination fees. Yeah? So I believe that we can liaise with political parties insofar as allowing this special group to be exempted from paying of these fees. It may be a small amount. It may be a small amount to a normal person, but to someone who has no job, to a youth, to a PWD, it may be high. I know now they halve that amount, but I think we can work together, because IEBC engages with all stakeholders. IEBC meets with political parties. IEBC can recommend proposals. They don't have to accept, but they can take into consideration.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. As we are seated here, we are with the media.
Yes.
And ideally, they are reporting whatever we are saying.
Yes.
What other roles do you think the media plays in an electoral process, apart from reporting?
The media is very critical in the electoral process.
Very beautiful.
Yes.
Good.
Because they give us, they give us that conduit, that platform for the IEBC to communicate to the electorate. The media are key in that they have wide coverage. Yeah, we have the media in terms of radio, in terms of TV. They have wide coverage, so they're able to disseminate information much more better than IEBC and much deeper than IEBC. So they are critical aspects of the electoral process, and IEBC cannot do without them. So as IEBC, we need to have continuous structured engagement with the media, because they are our voices. They disseminate information to the masses. However, the media also needs to understand that they hold a very critical role in this country's process, in this country's, if I may say, this country's survival, or this country's longevity. So the media also need to understand that they need to be careful in their reporting. They need to be impartial in their reporting. They need to be aware that their role is not only critical, it's very important, and very necessary for this country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. In case you are appointed for this job, then you become the commissioner, you report to the commission, then you find that the staff actually there are seriously demotivated. You sit with them, find out reasons why they are demotivated, then you come up with new HR policies. Then all of a sudden the staff rejects the new HR policies. How will you deal with this?
Thank you, Madam, for that question. I'm actually aware that IEBC, by its nature, the staff in IEBC undergo a number of challenges. They are attacked in their homes. They are blamed for any IEBC's wrongdoing. They suffer the blame of IEBC's misgivings, misdirections, misdoings. So I think the staff in IEBC are critical. Similarly, the staff in IEBC, I'm aware that in the structure of IEBC, there's no clear progression. We have people who have been stuck in the same job group, in the same position, since they joined IEBC 10 years ago. So it's true, we have a lot of motivation in IEBC, but I think as a commissioner, you don't go and make policies without involving citizens, your staff. It's a process of making policy. And the major process is that you must have participation of the people towards whom that policy will work. So before you move to this step where the staff reject a policy, you may have jumped a step, a process. Okay. So I think before you make a policy, you must engage the person or the group upon which the policy will be used. So I don't foresee a situation where as a commissioner or as a commission will pass a policy and then the staff will reject the policy unless the commission has jumped the policy formulation processes, okay, which is normal, which is standard.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia, for that. Cecilia, from your records, you are a director?
Yes.
Kindly tell us how many staff are under you. What's the span of control?
I have 5 staff below me.
How many?
5.
5, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. At what levels?
I have a driver, yeah. I have clerical officers, I have legal officers below me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I'll now request the Vice Chair to ask you some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. I'm glad to learn that you come from Kargi. I was in Kargi some time back and drank your beautiful camel milk.
Thank you.
Now, Cecilia, you say you are born leader. You come from a family of leadership, a leadership family. Could you just tell us, give us what you think of 5 key principles of leadership that define good leadership or good leader?
Thank you, Mr. Awori. I'm actually very shocked that you know Kargi. It's in the very farthest corners of this country, and I'm so happy that you've been there. So I believe as a leader, we have a number of key requirements of a good leader. The major one is honesty. A leader needs to be honest. You cannot lead if you're not honest. You cannot lead if people don't follow you, people don't believe in your cause. Similarly, as a leader, you must be accountable. A leader takes responsibility of their actions and is ready to be held to account by their actions. Similarly, a leader needs to be transparent in their engagements. You can't be a leader and then you go and undertake meetings in secrecy, or you do things which are not right in secret. Especially in IEBC, as a leader, you must ensure that you are seen to be transparent and you're also transparent. You can't be having meetings with one side at night, another one in the morning. So you need to be transparent in all your engagements, in all your meetings. Similarly, a leader must be bound by the rule of law. because we are not animals, we are human beings, and we are bound by law. Finally, I think a leader needs to be a motivator, because a leader works with a team. You don't come in as yourself, you come in as a team. Such a leader should inspire the people below them. A leader needs to motivate the staff below them so as to achieve the objectives, the goals, the missions of that organization.
Have you ever been in a situation in your professional life where your leadership skills were challenged, tested to the limit?
Thank you for that question. In my few years of experience, around 12 years, I've encountered a number of situations where I have been challenged, more so when working for IEBC and RPP. What happens is that elections bring out the worst in us as human beings. So you have people who come, candidates who come to you, who don't want to follow the law, and they come to you with huge sums of money and ask you to look the other way as they undertake, or to ignore a flaw, to ignore the law and assist them. So I have undergone this process, and my answer is always that one, I am a leader. I may not be at the helm of IEBC, but whatever I do represents IEBC, and my actions can catch up with me. If not today, maybe tomorrow. I also have a son, and I always imagine that whatever I do now will have implications on him in the near future. So I try to be honest in my engagements and to have above board engagements with everyone. I have worked with political parties, I have worked with IEBC, and I'm sure I've not had a record of any wrongdoing in my previous engagements.
Let's imagine a scenario where you are in the field in some region, probably supervising elections, overseeing elections in that region on behalf of the commission. And below you are a team of personnel, IEBC staff. For some reason, they decide to completely refuse to cooperate with you, citing your leadership style, attitude towards them. They stop sharing information, become difficult. What would you do?
Thank you for that question. Conflict is part of human relations. Whenever human beings interact, some sort of conflict always arises. But as a leader, you must know how to deal with this conflict. And I think from my perspective, there are major factors that you must put in mind, you must have in place. One, you must give a listening ear. Two, you must be impartial in engagement. You must remain calm as a leader. You must also be ready to hear the solutions they propose. And similarly, finally, you must give feedback. So if the staff don't want to engage or are feeling intimidated or some other aspect, there are a number of styles you can take. You can choose to avoid that. You can choose to compromise on the same. You can choose to collaborate on the same. So there are a number of styles you can take as a leader to ensure that your work moves, your staff work effectively, and that there's harmony and there's teamwork in the office, in the organization.
Would that challenge you to re-examine?
Pardon?
Would that kind of challenge
Yes.
make you re-examine your leadership style, your attitude? Would it lead you to doing that? Or would you just ignore and say, fanyeni kazi, mpende msipende?
There are times where you are called to ignore. There are times where you're called to collaborate. There are times where you're called to compromise. There are times where you're called to accommodate. So each scenario has its own different responses to it.
Now, in terms of IEBC, again, leadership, because it's a leadership institution supposed to oversee the issues to do the elections. What do you think has been the leadership challenge in IEBC? To the extent that confidence in the institution among Kenyans is so low?
Thank you. I think the major issue in IBC has that IBC may not communicate very well to the public. So if you don't communicate very well, what happens is that the public thinks you're hiding. Yeah. So we've not had in place very good communication strategies in place. Similarly, I think that IBC's challenge has also been a lot of external interference. Yeah, which makes execution of its mandates a bit difficult. Similarly, I believe that we have had a challenge in terms of confidentiality, because what happens is that every organization has their own risks. Yeah, locally, internationally, every body suffers risks. But the issue with IBC is that our risks are out there. What happens is that we have staff who go out and leak information. Like in the last time, we saw the CEO and the chairman, each giving their own memos. Yeah, so I think we also need to not only be transparent in engagement, but also choose or maintain confidentiality, because the role of IBC is very sacred. Yeah, because IBC holds this country's togetherness at hand. A small mistake in IBC can cost this country, and you've seen in ACK. Yeah, so I think we need to understand as election officers that we are bound by not only the laws, but by our duties to the country. We must be patriotic. We must choose, we must know where to draw the line. Yes, we'll be transparent, but we also draw the line so that we don't have memos flying in and about of IBC. Personally, I think that is very wrong. Similarly, we must come up with our own inborn solutions to our challenges. What IBC faces, what Kenya faces, is not unique. The US, we are aware of the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump issue. We are aware of the Russians' interference, alleged interference in the electoral process. But we don't see the US electoral system coming out so open. We don't see the US itself, the persons, the media coming out to castigate their country. So as a country, we need to be loyal to our country. We need to be patriotic to our country. And even as in IBC, the staff, the commissioners must understand that our role is not only to ourselves, it is to this country. We hold this country's national fabric at hand, and we must execute this role to the best of our ability and with the highest degree of patriotism.
I think we'll end my interview on that point of patriotism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I'll now request Reverend Father Mutie to ask you some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Cecilia.
Good afternoon, Father.
Allow me to take you through just a few questions. And to begin with, I would wish to ask you, in your view, what's the difference between ethics and integrity?
Thank you for the question, Father. I think they're all related, because integrity is honesty, is moral uprightness. Ethics has the same relation, so they're interrelated. As a public officer, we have a number of laws guiding us, a number of structures, a number of instruments that guide our interactions. We have the Constitution, we have the Leadership and Integrity Acts, we have the Public Officers Ethics Act. So all this guide our interactions, our engagements as public officers. So I think they're interrelated words and have the same general meaning.
Oh, so there is no difference. You want to tell me, can integrity be imposed on you?
Integrity? Yes or no?
Elaborate.
Because the law can impose integrity on you. The law prescribes how you operate, how you conduct yourself. Similarly, some aspects of this issue is inborn. Yeah, so they're all interrelated.
Okay, let me move further and ask you another question. It has been said that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for the good man to do nothing. Share an experience where you had an option to look away when an unlawful or unethical act was happening, but you chose to do something.
Thank you for that. That I may speak in terms of my personal engagement. I was once undergoing my normal day-to-day activities, and I saw the mob lynching someone, an alleged thief. It was a very emotive situation, and there's a lot of emotion at play. So I intervened with my small structure then, with my small frame then. I stood up and I begged the people to allow the law take its course. It was a very emotive issue, and I put all my fears aside, and I said that we must do the right thing. This person may have stolen from someone, but he's not been adjudged. There's a process to be undertaken so as to find him guilty or not. So I stood my ground. I was pushed a bit here and there, but finally I think he was saved. So I think for me, that was my highest highlight of my interactions and my engagement with people.
Thank you. Just to take you back in your life, I see you have achieved so much despite the fact that you had challenges as you grew up.
Thank you.
Allow me to just ask, in an African setup, one of our scholars said, Professor Beatty said, "I am because we are." Do you ascribe your success to any other person, or it was an individual endeavor?
Thank you for that question. I ascribe my success to one, God. I'm a huge believer in God, and I've seen His hand in my life. I also aspire my success to good mentors. I have met good people on my way who have held my hand, who have given me guidance, who have given me mentorship. So I have, especially IEBC and IEC, I was there when I was at my very young age, and I had bosses, I had mentors who held my hand, who allowed me to play my role simultaneously, the role of being a new young parent and the role of being an election official. So I've had in my life good people, good mentors, and of course, God is always prime in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Cecilia. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Reverend Father. Cecilia, if I can just ask you a general knowledge question. I know you know the definition of who a youth is.
Yes.
What's the definition of an older member of society?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our Constitution defines an older member of a society as one who's over the age of 60, and one whom, by virtue of their age, are unable to partake in the daily or in activities that they may be required to undertake. This is clearly spelled out in Article 56, I think, of the Constitution. Yeah.
Thank you. And now, with that, we come to the end of your oral interview. I can invite you to make any remarks you may have at this time to the panel.
Thank you, Madam. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I know it's not a mean achievement for a young person like myself to be here. I know that IEBC's role is sacred, is critical to this country's fabric. And as such, I want to thank this panel for enabling me to be here, giving me this opportunity. And I hope that this panel is able to pick the best candidates who will steer our country forward, who will maintain our country's fabric, who will ensure that we have a system that is trustworthy, that has the public confidence, and that will, at least for the first time, will have what Kenyans expect in an elections management body. So thank you, panel, and thank you, Madam Chair.
And on behalf of the panel and on behalf of Kenyans, I also want to express our appreciation, sincere appreciation, for you offering yourself up to serve as a member of IEBC. We don't take it for granted, so thank you, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
So you will now be escorted out by a member of the Secretariat. Please make sure you go out with your original certificates. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And now we'll break, and we'll resume tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.